Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Roker Report podcast in association with Sunlun Community Soup Kitchen. It's Gav back after a defeat. For the first time in what feels like forever, we did lose. We lost to Cardiff. Unfortunately, but you know, we have to turn up when we get beat, and me and Chris are here. You alright, mate?
No, I'm not. I'm not okay. I've just dawned on us what
We've
happened.
both done a decent job of avoiding it, haven't we, for most of the evening, and then sat back down to do this and reminded ourselves of the game and how we lost and all the rest of it. So, yeah, we don't want to depress people into turning the podcast off now, but unfortunately, we're here and we'll have to talk about Sunlun losing. Never mind.
Yeah, it's my fault. It's my fault. I backed us to win, and I never backed us to win, and I did it, and I said it would be comfortable. So it's all my fault. Everyone can blame me. I'm
giving a shout out to my mate Crooksy, who came today with us again and hasn't seen Sunderland win since before the pandemic.
Oof.
Before the COVID pandemic. That was the last time he saw Sunderland win. He bought a season ticket this year and all of us groaned. We were like, oh no, because his record is shocking. And before the game, my dad asked, is Crooksy coming to the match? I said, yeah. And he went, tell him to piss off. He's not allowed.
There's always one.
And he got stick when he come in the pub before the match, and then when we went behind, everyone just looked at him and was, just it's his fault, isn't it? Got to blame somebody.
You'll have to tie him up to some railings or something next time he goes. Just leave him, pick him up after the match.
Just ban him. He's not allowed anymore. I'll not give him a lift. But yeah, we lost to Cardiff 1-0, and when I was walking out the ground, I turned to my mate and said, you know what it is? I wish we'd got battered, because it would have been easier to take if we'd lost 2 or 3-0 than losing like that. And it doesn't happen often, but to totally dominate a game like that from pretty much start to finish, and then give away a really sloppy corner. And you know what it is? Again, all the lads I was with, we just looked at each other and we gave that corner away. And I hold my hands up. I said we're gonna concede. Yeah, it's written. You can just tell it's coming. We knew it was coming, and then we all just looked at each other and threw our arms up. Not one of us was surprised, because it just felt like that was the kind of thing that would happen after not taking our chances. That we would concede a goal in that way. Like I say, we'll get into the performance and all the rest of it, and naturally we're disappointed with losing, because really we didn't deserve to lose. I don't think the team will dwell too much on it. I don't think Tony Mowbray will, because there were a lot of positives to take from it. But it's just tough, innit? It's tough because of the way we did it, Chris. I mean, like I say, it's hard to take defeat anyways, but then to get beat when you've been so on top is really sore.
Well, I mean, let's get one thing straight. You've been there plenty of times when we've got absolutely thumped, 3-4-0 down by half time. And I'm thinking like was it the Villa game at home or the Palace game at home?
I left early. Yeah, and one, left early from both ends.
So if you think how you felt in that game compared to this, I mean, this is a completely, you say you'd rather get battered, but but to be honest, like, this is just one of those days.
Yeah.
And I mean, like you said, we'll get into the performance and all that sort of stuff, but just the whole thing, this whole scenario, and we talked in the preview about last year against Cardiff, and this game reminded me of, on so many occasions, that this kind of happened last season. It was so similar. I mean, and we talked about the Southampton game, and it happened on the opening day in a certain way against Ipswich, where we were dominant with the ball. We had loads of possession. We didn't really kind of force the issue, create really good chances. And it's happened again. And it's one of those days. And, it's one of these lessons we'll really need to learn from last season. And I think we're getting there. The Southampton game proved that, coming from behind against Rotherham, kind of proved that to a certain extent. But in this game, in the Ipswich game, it's kind of half our home game so far. We're repeating the same mistakes from last season, and we'll get into the hows and whys. But yeah, it's slightly concerning that we haven't fully got over that form from last season, and it looks like we're tripping up again in games like this.
Yeah, there was a tweet put out by Cardiff at half time, obviously just saying half time we're level, And the replies are really interesting because it's just full of Cardiff fans talking about how good we are. Sunderland are crazy good. Sunderland are decent, aren't they? Christ. Sunderland are very good. You know, that sort of thing. Keep it a draw, lads. It would be an incredible point. You know, that was really, to be honest, that first half, that was when we needed that 1-goal lead to go into the break. And they had something to do. I think they, like Tony Mowbray said after the game, I think they came for a point. And when they got in at half time, and I think they had like a guy go down a few minutes before the break. And what it did is sucked all the momentum out of the game. We just had a really good chance. We didn't take it. Somebody went down for a couple of minutes and it sucked all the life out of the game. And Cardiff got in at half time at 0-0. And I just think it gave them something to cling on to, didn't it? And it meant that it was going to be difficult for us in the second half.
Oh, look, I mean, throughout all this, I mean, we'll talk about Sunland, obviously, but you've got to hold your hands up and talk about Cardiff, because Cardiff came here with a game plan. They kind of executed it to perfection. I wrote after the notes after 15 minutes. I was writing things like they were slowing the tempo right down. They were slowing the game down. They were frustrating us. They were patient when they had the ball. They were just trying to keep it. They weren't necessarily trying to kind of force the issue. They didn't look like they didn't threaten our goal at all. They didn't even have half a chance in that first half. But they didn't really care. Their game plan was to stay in the game and basically to keep it, well, ideally to keep it level for as late as possible, and then get that one chance and take advantage of it. And I mean, again, we'll come on to it, but we handed that chance to them on a plate by giving away that corner. But in that first half, especially the first half, Cardiff's game plan was to frustrate, it was to niggle, it was to get the referee to blow his whistle, it was to be stop-start. All they needed to do was watch all of the games. If they watched all of the DVDs from, all of the games from last season, our home games, and analyse them all, then that's the game plan they would have come up with, because we kind of tend to struggle when we can't get into a rhythm. And again, in the preview, I mentioned about the early goal, the first goal. We are at home. This team needs to score the opening goal and go ahead. Because if we don't, the longer the game goes on, the more we get frustrated, the more we start taking risks, and then giving that chance away. And that's exactly what happened. But again, going back to those comments of those Cardiff fans talking about how good we were, we didn't, and I'm repeating myself from last season, but we didn't really create like a fantastic chance. We didn't create that. We didn't create an opening where in that first half, and I've got half chance here, the Jobe header. I've got the Clark where he beat a couple of players and made the keeper made a save. I've got the 09 ball over the top to Burstow. When Barr did the pull back, but they were all half chances. None of them were kind of, none of them were that chance where we're both sitting here thinking, oh, well, he should have scored that. We didn't have a chance like that. And we didn't create anything clear cut.
Yeah, there was maybe that one. The one that comes to mind is Roberts in the second half.
Yeah,
where it's a nice little bit of football, and he's about 10 yards out, and I think he should do better. But yeah, you're right. We had a lot of half chances.
But we're talking about going in goalless at half time. We're talking about that first half, and just in that first half, it was frustrating because those Cardiff fans were right that our play was really good. We were fantastic on the ball. Mm-hmm. Dan Neil, I mean, that was a Premier League midfielder showing how good he is in the Championship. Yeah. What Dan Neil did in that first half, he was unbelievable. He just dictated
ran the game.
He just absolutely just managed. He bossed everything in midfield. He was the pivot. Everybody, the ball went to him. Everything came from Dan Neil. And our play was fantastic when we were just knocking it about. But the problem is there was hardly any end product. You can go back to podcasts last season and we were saying the same things in home games. There needs to be an end product when we're that dominant in games.
Does it concern you a little bit with the way that we're sort of like, again, dominating, particularly the last 3 games I'm talking about, dominating the ball, and, we won the 2 prior to this one, but not really any of that play involving a centre forward? Because Burstow's on the pitch, we're dominating the ball, we're getting balls into the box, we're, like you say, we're getting it wide, we're pulling it back, but none of this is, we're not talking about Mason Burstow, we're not talking about, oh God, Burstow had a great chance. It's like, It's almost as if he's not there.
Yeah.
This almost sounds daft to say it, but have we forgot how to play with a striker?
Yeah. Well, if you go back to the opening day of the season against Ipswich, everyone was talking about like analysing Hamia's performance because we were so dominant and he hardly had a kick. And then this is our 4th home game of the season, and we've got a different striker up there, and we're talking about exactly the same type of game where we've dominated the ball.
Mm-hmm.
We've been the team on top, and our striker hasn't had a kick again. And the only time there was only once or twice where actually somebody looked up and looked to play him in, and I'm thinking of that 09 ball over the top that was really close to him. He just couldn't pull it down and get that kind of first touch right. But that's about, thinking about it, that from memory, that's about the only time we kind of looked for him on the shoulder of the last man to get him behind. Other than that, we did our game plan from last season, which was going, from side to side on the edge of the box a little bit, looking for that runner. But we didn't have that runner enough. I mean, I think on one occasion it ended up being Niall Huggins being that runner who got him behind on the left hand side. But it needs to, we need to think about slipping that striker in. But the way we go forward, especially at home, and if Cardiff set up the way that teams do when the put 2 banks of 4 in front of from the edge of the box, we are sometimes too slow to kind of get up the pitch, and we let them kind of settle into their defensive positions, and then we struggle to break them down. We almost need, the few times we caught Southampton on the break, I mean, that was perfect, but we need a plan for sides who don't come out, who just are happy to sit there. And like you said, it has to involve the striker.
Yeah. Kieran Race has tweeted us and said, someone needs to tell the lads it's all right to shoot sometimes or cross a ball in. Had Burstow and Bellingham in the box, then Semedo, who's 6'4", and didn't get a ball lifted in. We played lovely football, but even the best teams recognise when something else needs changing in games. And that was the big takeaway I had, like, after the subs, and we'll get into that in a bit more detail in a bit. But we were almost guilty of overplaying it at times, and you just wanted somebody to... normally it's Clark, like who'll cut inside and get a shot away. And I know it's tough when you're playing really against 2 banks of 5, but at the same time, I'm looking and thinking, just someone shoot, just do something different. Like, we don't need to overplay. I feel like I'm nitpicking because generally, if we'd played like that against almost any other team, we would probably scored 2 or 3 goals. And I don't want us to change too much, but you do learn more from your defeats than you do your victories. And for me, it was more that, sometimes in a game you need that plan B, you need to change it up. The plan B should be having a centre forward on the pitch. It should be getting balls wide, crossing it, trying to, when they've got spells of possession, getting it up to the centre forward who can hold it up and bring people into play. There was none of that, and I don't know whether that's more of a reflection on Burstow or Hamia, or whether it's a reflection on just the rest of the players and the fact that we found a way of playing which works. It's worked this week. We beat a team just a few days ago, and it's like how do you get out of that mentality of playing that way, even when the game isn't going the way you want it to, which it wasn't in this occasion. Yes, we had lots of the ball. We were creating quite a lot of chances, like you said, half chances. But at the same time, we got to a point in that second half where it was fairly obvious it wasn't working and we need to try something different. And although we made a lot of changes in terms of substitutes, the play didn't feel like it was any different. We were still doing the working it side to side thing around the box, and that was the frustration for me in the end coming away. I would have been frustrated if we'd had a point, to be honest. If we'd come away and we'd only drawn that game, I would have been frustrated. But I was even more frustrated with the fact that we lost and we still didn't score a goal because it was just too much of the same thing for me in the end. Yeah,
you're right, but it's got to be, you talked about kind of crosses and shots. Obviously, you need them to get the ball, near the goal to score. It's not rocket science, but it's the type of cross, because there's no point in knocking it out wide and just lumping it in the box, because Cardiff had big, huge units at the back, so we weren't going to be kind of dominant in the air, if we just threw balls into the box. But it was balls, like, we needed to get in positions. Like, I remember Barr had the ball down the right hand side, and he played that ball right in behind the defence, in between the defence and the goalkeeper, that Burstow was about 5 yards away from. And if Burstow maybe should have been more on the kind of on the shoulder of the last man to to be in a position to kind of take advantage. But it's those sort of balls we needed to play in rather than to just get it wide and knock it in and kind of hope for the best. It needed to be when you drag the opposition out. And one thing we didn't do a lot last season, which at home, which we did away quite a lot, is tempt the opposition out a bit. So, instead of them sitting on the edge of the box, is to kind of almost try and tempt them out and work the ball so you pull them out of positions. But we ended up getting 5-10 yards outside of their box where they were just quite happy to sit. And the other thing that we didn't do enough either was, which in fact we did against Southampton, was when Cardiff actually pushed on a little bit and had half a chance or got a corner or something like that, to see that as almost an opportunity, that there's space now, that they're not locked into their positions on the edge of the box, and to get the ball forward quickly. But I don't think we did that enough. We played some lovely stuff, don't get us wrong. But for me, I just think, especially at home, the tempo needs to be quicker to get the ball forward quicker in the final third so they can't set up. But if you take your time and play the ball forward slowly, that gives the opposition all of that time as you're doing that to just settle in, get in position. Right, okay, we know where we're going to defend. We're on the edge of our box. We know what we're doing. You need to catch them off the hop when they're out of position so that there's a bit of panic and there's a bit of chaos, and you need to do things a bit quicker. And I mean, how many times last season as well did those quick 1-2s, Ahmad, Roberts on the edge of the box, quick 1-2s to kind of split, to take 2 or 3 players out of the game. And we didn't do that enough. And maybe once or twice, Clark and Huggins look like they've got a decent kind of relationship going on that left-hand side. And so at times it looked almost there where they were doing it a bit quick and they were playing 1-2s. But it didn't happen enough, and especially in that first half. I mean, like I said, I'm looking at a list of chances that I wrote down, and it just wasn't enough. Like I said, I think the best chance was that one where, like I said, Bar and Joe, and actually talking about 1-2s, it was Bar and Jobe. They played a 1-2. Bar got in behind, he pulled it back, and I think it was Pritchard, and it got deflected wide. But I think that was our best chance of the first half.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about the negatives, and there's other stuff we need to go into, but it wasn't all bad as well. It wasn't all bad. We mentioned Dan Neil before. Dan Neil, for me, he didn't maintain the levels right the way through the game, but that's about as complete a midfield performance as I've seen from him. Yeah. I just thought he was outstanding. Some of the stuff he's doing at the minute is Premier League.
Yeah.
Like some of those touches, some of those flicks, just the way that, like my mate was comparing him to Jordan Henderson, but not the Sunlun version of Jordan Henderson like that. The Jordan Henderson who sort of captained Liverpool to a lot of success. And the way he just held the middle of the pitch and was spraying the ball around, and like, I think you call him the pivot. That's probably very accurate. I thought Niall Huggins had his best game in the Sunderland shirt, although there were aspects of it where I'm like, just use your friggin' left foot. But other than that, he had a good game, and I think we missed him when we took him off, and we'll get onto that in terms of the way the shape of the team went to shit. Similarly, Jobe was brilliant for me. Some of the things. So, do you know what I like about him? He's 18-year-old and he doesn't make mistakes. Like you don't watch him and think, oh God, he made like what most kids would do in a game, make like 2 or 3 mistakes, and you sort of write it off. Oh, they're only 18-year-olds. That is what it is. He doesn't do any of that. Nothing. Yeah. It's like he's pretty flawless, like Jobe, in the way he plays. He plays passes with pace. Like he zips it into people's feet. There's none of this like hitting a ball 5 yards short or 5 yards too far ahead. Everything's like accurate into feet with pace, and I just really like him. I actually think he's a lot better than what I was expecting. And I wasn't really sure what I was expecting. I think some of the expectation was dampened by the comments of Birmingham fans and stuff when he arrived. But for me, like, he's just a good player, isn't he? And he's only going to get better. He's getting better every single week. Around the rest of the pitch, it wasn't like the other night where you could go through the whole team and pick out people. But I thought Bar had a decent game. It just seems a bit ironic to me that we made 4 subs and 3 of the players who came off were probably 3 of the best players. And I guess in a way, in my opinion, it was the fact that some of those players came off, why we didn't get that goal at that moment in the game. I didn't understand particularly Jobe. I didn't understand bringing him off for what I've just said. I thought he had a great game. I can sort of see the understanding behind bringing off Barr, who again I thought played really well, but he was playing well, and I thought we looked more of a threat with him on the right. And I thought maybe if you bring on Roberts with him, they work quite well together. That might have been nice. And I thought Pritch was struggling, to be honest, and I thought maybe he would have been the one to come off. And then the Huggins substitution felt like it was done just on the flip because we'd already conceded a goal, and I think he was going to bring Pritchard off, and Russen's already standing there ready to come on, and he brings off Huggins, which is you fair enough, you're going for it, but then really if you look at the game as a whole, Cardiff should have scored 2 goals because we didn't have a left back on the pitch, and if we'd been sat here talking about a 3-0 defeat, we would have really zoned in on that decision to bring off Niall Huggins. It made no sense really, other than to say we were going for it, but it was at the risk of the shape of the team, and I think we were very lucky in the end. So, I mean, I'd just get your thoughts on their performances really and the decision to bring them off, because, like I say, 3 of the better players on the pitch for me, and I don't think we've looked any better for taking them off.
Yeah, I mean, start with Jobe. If you'd never seen him play before, and somebody pointed him and said, "Oh yeah, he's 26-year-old," and he's played in the Premier League and we bought him for 8 million or something, you go, "Oh yeah, fair enough, yeah, that makes sense," because he's fantastic in the way he's slotted in, and I mean, it's just, I can't tell you how old it makes us feel that he's just turned 18. In the last few days. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. But like you said, I mean, you're absolutely right. He never gives away possession. I mean, he's decision making as well. He always knows when to play it simple. If he's in a bit of trouble, he plays it simple. If he's got a few yards, he uses it and then plays a ball forward. But he always seems to make the right decision. And like I said, that obviously kind of runs in the family because, it's the way kind of Jude Bellingham plays. He takes risks when it's worth taking and, and all that sort of stuff. They've just got naturally good decision making. I mean, and just on his substitution, I mean, I was thinking about this because you're right. I mean, if you're just taking... if you're just taking this game into account and saying we're trying to get a result, there's half an hour to go. And remember, it was still goalless at that time. And if you and yes, I would have went for Pritchard as well. I would have brought Pritchard off and kept Jobe on. But when you kind of think about it, like Jobe Bellingham started every game for us this season, and he's just
I did think that when he came off, but it was the way he'd been playing, Chris. I do get that, but
he only started like 20 games last season, and he's pretty much his first breakthrough season for Birmingham last season. And he started 7 games, and this is the 3rd game in 7 days. And I'd be amazed if actually last season he did that for Birmingham. He played kind of 3 games in a week. I'm sure they kind of rested him, and I'm also convinced that this wasn't the plan at the start of the season. I think when they talked to Jobe Bellingham, when they brought him in, I don't think they were saying, "Oh yeah, you're going to play 45, 50 games this season." That wasn't the plan. And as good as he is, you want to do that. You want to play him every game. You want to play him 90 minutes in every game. But you just wonder if in those situations he's played 3 games in a week. And actually, a lot of the players looked knackered at the end against Blackburn. And I did wonder whether he'd rest a few for this game and change it up a bit just to freshen it up. Because a lot of them looked knackered at the end of that. Barr looked shattered at the end of that. He looked gone. And Jobe was one of them. He looked his legs had gone by the end of that game because they'd worked so hard. So I did wonder whether he'd change it up. And I was surprised he kept with the exact same 11. So I'm just wondering, on the hour mark, still goalless. And actually, to be fair as well, and look, I would have picked Pritchard as well, but Ashish actually looked dangerous when he came on. He looked lively. So I didn't mind Ashish coming on. I think he livened the game up, and he brought a bit of energy to us in the final third where we needed it. And Roberts did as well, although nothing really came off for him. But yeah, so in that sense, if it was something to do with that, then maybe there's a reason. But just in pure football terms, yeah, you can't argue with that. It should have been, Jobe shouldn't have been brought off. The Huggins substitution, I'm fine with that. That was a last roll of the dice. Look, we're behind at home, like 87th minute, few minutes to go. Look, why not? Just roll the dice. Let's try and get a result. I haven't got much of a problem with that. Yeah, you could argue, was Huggins the right person to come off? Was he not? I don't mind.
I was thinking just after the mistake Hume had made.
Yeah,
maybe would have brought
that's
him
fine.
off.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, but I don't mind bringing a few minutes to go at home losing. I'd rather us throw the kitchen sink at it and lose 3-0 than.
Yeah.
The Hemia Burstow one, that also made sense because Burstow wasn't, he was getting frustrated and he needs minutes as well. I don't think he could do a full game at the minute either.
Did Hemia's starting position seem weird to you? He seemed to be deep.
No, he what he did was, and I think this is him being a little bit desperate. I think he just went hunting for the ball. I think what he done was in his previous performances when he'd come on, he tried to stay as that kind of furthest point on the last man, but he didn't see any of the ball. So I think in this game he just thought, sod it, I'm going to go looking for the ball and make myself available. It's because you were absolutely right. He kept dropping deep for the ball, but I think he just wanted the ball. And I think if he stood up front, he just thought, I'm not going to get it here. I'm not going to get across. I'm not going to get. So I'm going to drop in and shout for the ball. So I don't think that was instructions either, because at times he kind of looked completely out of position. He was on the halfway line at some points, kind of almost like a midfielder asking for the ball.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. That made us think it might be tactical, but I don't know. It just seemed a little bit strange how deep he seemed to be.
You might be right. It just seemed to me like he just got fed up and wanted the ball, so he went looking for it. He just dropped.
Yeah. What about Rusin? I thought he looked all right in the moments he had.
Hard to tell.
A lot of people. It's strange because we put a tweet out asking people just to drop some comments and all the rest of it for the pod. A lot of people impressed with what they've seen from him, and it was only a very brief cameo, but if you can have left an impression on people after losing a game in just a short space of time, it certainly bodes well. And I know Mowbray's been quick to point out that he's going to take time to adapt because there's a bit of an issue with the language. But if the other strikers aren't quite cutting it at the minute, and this lad's coming off the back of he's a lot more experienced than the other strikers we've got. And in my opinion, based only on what I've seen in sort of highlights videos from and not even highlights videos, I've watched full games of when he played for the team in Ukraine. But he's very much that type of forward who likes to get on the ball and link up play and drop in, and he's more like what we've already got, basically. Does it matter so much that there's an issue there with communication? If he's better than the players, if it makes more sense to have Rusin in that position, can you say Mowbray playing him there sooner rather than later?
Well, let's get something straight. If you're watching full games from the Ukrainian league, you've got far too much time on your hands.
I'm blaming Andy. Andy, who SAFC source, who people don't know, Andy, who does our ratings and stuff. He goes hunting for these things and sends them in our group chat, and I end up down a rabbit hole and end up watching them.
Well, yeah, I need all the time, all the spare time that you've got, because. But no, I don't think so. I think for a while, to be honest, you watch players in training and things like that, and that once they've got that football and kind of link, and they know they're playing with a decent player. Like Ahmad and Roberts, when they were linked up last season, it wasn't because they were talking to each other all the way through the game.
I don't know. Roberts had a couple of months in France before he joined us. You never know. Might have picked up the lingo and all that.
but when they're in the middle of a game, when one passes the ball to the other, because the other they know the other one's a good player and they know exactly where he's going to go, and it's that sort of link. And Rusin will be the same. He'll link up with he'll get partnerships going, but he just needs minutes on the pitch because these things don't necessarily click in training. Sometimes it just happens in games in the link up, But yeah, I mean, we should as well, because Rusin does look sharp. He only had 5 minutes, but it did remind me of the kind of cameos that Oshish had. QPR, he came on and looking sharp and looking energetic and looking up for it. And Rusin looked the same. But we should really talk about Burstow and his performances, because. We've played with two strikers so far this season. We've played with Burstow and we've played with Hemia, and they've both ended up in the same place. like both being young lads frustrated that they're not getting the ball. And you've already said that is it the way we're playing, and we can't. It's not our game to get it to that last man who's on the is off or playing off the shoulder and doing that sort of thing. And as you said, Ruson's not that player. He's not. He doesn't seem like the same as those two, where he kind of plays a little bit deeper. And you wonder if that was part of why Hamia did what he did when he came on. That he wasn't playing as that striker. Maybe they're trying to do a bit more in training.
It makes me feel like sooner rather than later we're going to see Rusin starting games, because we clearly we feel the need to have someone in that position who's got a goal scorer's instinct. But at the same time, it can't be at the structure that we've built and the way we play. We can't substitute any of that just to shoehorn a forward in who doesn't really fit the system. Yeah. And I feel like that might be what's happened here, is that we've developed a style of play it's very good, and there's no way we need to compromise on that. Like there's no way I would be changing that. But at the same time, we're backed into a corner slightly because people have complained for long enough. Yes, we needed strikers through the door. We found some. But the style of play would have to change, you would think, to bring those players into a place where we're getting the best from them. And the other thing we haven't really said about Burstow, which I do think needs to be said, he ain't our player. And it's like he's had 3 starts now, and I don't think he's done enough to start on Friday. And I'm looking at it, I'm thinking we've got Rusin, who's our player. We've got Hamia, who's our player, but perhaps not quite as suited as Rusin to the way we play. Roberts isn't starting games, and Roberts is a very important player. And I don't know whether Mowbray might look at it, and I don't know what the agreement is with Chelsea with Burstow. But are we obliged to play him? I don't think we'd back ourselves into a corner like that. But I kind of feel like, and this is just me being very harsh maybe, and I know he's a young lad and all the rest of it, Burstow, but I would be more inclined to persist with our own players, especially if it makes sense. And long term, I think playing that link-up type of striker like Rusin maybe is, and apparently that's what Mayenda's like, and we still haven't seen him.
Yeah,
I would be more inclined to think that's the best way forward. And I think on Friday, that might be what we see. I think we might see. I wouldn't be surprised based on that little cameo and then a good week's training. I wouldn't be surprised to see Rusin start, because who could make a convincing case to start Burstow again? No. There isn't one really, is there? He's done okay. He's worked hard, but he hasn't done enough to say he should be starting on Friday night. And just because he's a centre forward, that doesn't make any player on the pitch. If they don't play particularly well, we should be looking at the other options and thinking, right, well, is it time to bring this player in? Is it time to bring that player in? Like if Pembele was fit, that you might be thinking, should he be coming into the team? If Mayenda was fit, it doesn't matter who it is. What I'm saying is that that's why you've got a squad. That's why we've got competition. That's why the club have invested in players this summer to bring them in to give us options in the team. And on Friday, I would definitely be looking to change something in that position, and based on what I've seen in the last few games.
Well, to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if he dropped Burstow and didn't go with a striker and brought Roberts in, and then have like a fluid front line of Roberts, Pritchard, Jobe, Clark, Barr, having those five players.
I wouldn't be bothered if they did that either. Yeah. I've seen us play well enough in that type of system before. I've got no problem with it.
Yeah, and it goes back to, I remember a conversation we had when in one of the pods, I think, when we were talking about bringing in strikers, and everyone was clamoring for us to bring in a striker, and we said, "Oh, we haven't got forward players," and didn't disagree with that. But I said at the time that it didn't make a difference. We could have brought in 10 forwards, but if you don't play to the strengths of having a front man up front and having a focal point, then you find you find a different way. You don't. What's the point? Well, let's bring in 5 strikers, but then not play in that way where you supply them with chances, because we're so used to now that and we were talking about, if let's say we have that fluid front line against Sheffield Wednesday where Roberts come in for Burstow, so we haven't got that focal point up front, but we kind of have that system where we don't slip that person in right at the end with a little pass through or something. We don't look to get in behind. We play sharp passes between those players on the edge of the box, and people look for 1-2s rather than having that kind of poacher stand on the 6-yard box. And we do, if we don't look for that player, there's no point in them being there. So, like you said, those players who we've brought in who are natural strikers are going to have to kind of bend to the way the other lads play because they're not going to look for them.
Yeah.
Like I said, we've got with so far in, we've tried 2 strikers in that role, and we haven't found them with anything. They've hardly had a sniff. So they need to kind of bend their game to do something else, or we have to change our whole game and try and provide them with chances, which I don't think is going to happen. But look, I mean, we're getting on to kind of our end product, but again, you've got to put into the equation that yes, there's issues we can look at from our side, but again, we've got to come back as well to say that we played a very organised Cardiff side because they were completely different to the Cardiff of last season. They're going to do all right this season. They're going to be at least mid-table, maybe pushing towards our top 6.
And that was without Aaron Ramsey as well, who's obviously a very good player. They didn't have him at all. So yeah, I think to be honest, you've got to give Cardiff credit for the way they came, and they picked their moments to slow it. It wasn't like they were kicking us all over the pitch, and it wasn't lots of really obvious time wasting like we've seen in the past. I just think they were really good. Just really good at slowing it down when it made sense to slow it down.
Absolutely.
Like I mentioned that one where. And he actually went off at half time, but at the time it looked coordinated because we had a chance around 41, 42 minutes. I can't remember which one it was. And then all of a sudden, Grant goes down, and then somebody else went down in the exact same manner.
Yeah.
And then the other fella realised Grant was down and got straight back up, and we all turned around. Well, that was obviously coordinated, wasn't it? But I'm not saying it was. It might not have been, but it felt like it was because. We'd had a big spell of momentum, and then that happened, and for 2 or 3 minutes there was nothing going on, and then it sucked the atmosphere out of the stadium completely. And I was looking at it and thinking, have they seen the fact we've scored in injury time at the end of the first half in the last 2 games, and thought, right, when Sunlun get to that point around half time where they might start building up a head of steam, slow them down. Let's somebody go down. Get the physios on, make everyone have a drinks break, something like that. It felt like it was a really well worked game plan. And if it wasn't, then fair enough. But it just felt like it was. And I know Grant came off at half time, which made us think he might have actually had an injury. But it was just the way it all happened. It seemed very coordinated. And like I say, fair play to them. They know that they had a game plan. Lots of teams come to the stadium alike with that game plan and don't execute it. But they did. And, I don't know about you, Chris, but I feel a little bit like this was when we're talking about lessons from the game and all the rest of it, this is very similar to the 2 games we've already lost this season before this one, Ipswich and Preston, where like Ballard and Ekwan and some other players were coming out after the game and saying, well, actually, we didn't think we played too badly in them games, even though we lost. I can't see the lads going in the changing room after that and kicking 10 bells of shit out of each other and screaming across the changing room. I don't think they'll have reacted that way. I think the message coming away from it will have been, look, you need to be more clinical. You need to be switched on when the moment mattered and all the rest of it. But we did a lot of good stuff in the game, and that's the irritating thing. If we'd won this game 1-0, me and you would be sitting here just talking about how dominant Sunderland were. Yeah. And that's all it was. It just hinged on a couple of little things really, and we might as well talk about that goal from Cardiff. Hume did brilliant to win the ball in the first instance, and he turns towards goal and puts it out for a corner, and you're going, oh, how are you, man? You've done all the hard work, and he put it behind for the corner. And like I say, I turned round to my mates now, and you just know what's coming. You just know what's coming. I knew it was coming. I predicted it. I said they're going to score, because to that point, they never looked like scoring Cardiff. And we made one daft mistake to give a corner away, and it just felt so obvious that it was going to happen. And I've watched it. I've pulled it back a few times. It's actually quite difficult on the replay to see really what sort of went wrong. But the ball gets fired into the box and kind of just hits the lad who scores. I don't know if he actually necessarily means to nod it towards goal or anything. But it's just poor, isn't it? All round. Poor to give the corner away. Poor defending on the set piece. Yeah, poor.
Yeah. And I mean, we talked about in midweek, we talked about the goal we conceded at Blackburn, and I was using the same words then. I just thought, we seem to, the goals we concede, we always seem to be able to point at ourselves. We always seem to shoot ourselves in the foot somehow. Like it's from our sloppiness rather than the opposition carving us apart. And it's funny actually because Blackburn carved us apart quite a lot, but the goal that they actually scored from was from our kind of errors at the back, and it but the majority of the time you look at our defence and they're almost flawless, and then suddenly they'll just have these moments of just complete brain farts where it just and it seems to end up resulting in a goal, but the mistake actually came from desperation. Because 5 minutes to go normal time, and then we start taking risks because we think it's 0-0. We've had and it's frustration because we've had complete domination of the game, and we think we should be winning, and all the players are frustrated. So if that's 10 minutes gone, first opening period of a game, Trey Hume knocks the ball towards the byline, and he knocks the ball down the line, and he gets rid, or he tries to pick a pass down the line. He would never go to Patterson, but he's trying to go to Patterson, so we've still got possession, so we can try and get a goal. And it's just desperation to go the other way. The fact that he's trying to knock it back to the keeper, and that's why he tries to do what he does, and it goes wrong. And and to be fair, Hume was getting more sloppy as the second half went on, and it just kind of, that was a kind of accumulation of slightly going downhill in that second half. But then, you've still got the chance after that. You go, right, well, you've made a mistake. Right, let's clear this corner. And it seemed like when the ball came in, and I've only seen it once or twice, but it seemed like Ballard had a chance to get rid, and he didn't win that header. It seemed like then Hume had a chance, and he didn't win that header. And then it hit off the lad, and it went in. And actually, O'Nine's marking, he seemed to be more bothered about the man, and he wasn't sure where the ball was, and he wasn't really marking him. If he was marking him with, the ball, looking at the ball where that was, he maybe could have cleared it, but he was too busy kind of bothering with the fellow who was marking. And yeah, I just think, again, I'll use the same words against Blackburn, just poor all round. And shooting ourselves in the foot. And then after that, I mean, you're talking about, you've already mentioned all the chances and how, we made the change after that, but we just lost our heads. And actually, you could argue a little bit that it got a bit frantic from even with 15, 20 minutes to go. We started getting a bit frantic because we were panicking because it was 0-0. And instead of sometimes just saying that's not the end of the world, even if we've dominated a game, to have the mentality to say, look, it's not the end of the world. It's 0-0. We'll take a point at the end, the worst case. But it's the sheer desperation of these players to say, well, we've played brilliant. We deserve 3 points. So they started getting frantic, panicking a little bit, thinking they have to score. And yeah, it just got more and more frantic until Hume did that, and we went behind.
Yeah, and like I said before, it could have been worse. Huggins coming off left that giant gap at left back, and 2 of their players had really, really good chances to kill the game off. I think the first one was from Wintle. I want to say I think it was the number 6 sitter from him, but the bigger sitter came from Tanner, who's the lad who you might remember scored the goal against Swansea a couple of weeks ago and got rave reviews and stuff for scoring like an absolute screamer in the derby match. I don't know how he missed, to be honest. It was on an absolute plate for him, and sticks it over the bar. I'm glad that they didn't get that second goal, because it would have been a lot harder to be positive about the performance had we just kind of tossed it off like that. But yeah, in the end, it was only 1-0, and I think you mentioned it before, didn't you? We were kind of throwing everything at it.
Yeah.
At that point, and these things happen when you do that.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't have minded too much if that happened. It happened. I'd rather, like you said, us throw everything at getting back into the game than just kind of letting the game kind of peter out and. That we're just going to get beat. But the thing is, I'm pretty sure, I mean, I might be wrong with this, but, I'm just looking at the kind of bits and pieces that I made notes of. And I'm looking at kind of the times when Cardiff actually went forward. Kind of like Patterson didn't have a save. I mean, I'm talking about before they went ahead.
That was their only shot on target when they scored.
Well, exactly. That's what I'm saying. If you don't do that at the right end, if you don't at the other end, you always leave yourself, susceptible to conceding that goal for that one half chance. A ball into the box, you miss a couple of headers, gansing off someone's back. That's, you leave yourself open to that. And like I said, after that, I don't mind too much, that they had chances because it just shows the sheer desperation of us trying to get a point. But yeah, I genuinely do think that the scenario of them having the corner came out of our desperation to come out of the game with more than a point, which I don't, and I like that in some ways, but in other ways we've got to control it because it ended up meaning we lost.
Yep. Well, let's do some 3-word reviews and then maybe some questions because we've got quite a few of those from the listeners, the Roker Report followers on X. I'm going to call it X. I keep saying this every Twitter or whatever it's called. It's called X these days. So, but yeah, 3-word reviews. So David, he says smash and grab. Aiden 112, Sunderland being Sunderland. Tim says wasn't our day. Chiz not clinical enough. Steve N, such is life. George says take our chances. Jack Redmond says why sub Job. Paul Anderson, cue the meltdown. Ian High, smash and grab, another one of those. Hazy, find the striker. Jay, not rotating, backfired. That's an interesting one. We haven't really touched on that, but we did think that he was going to rotate when we were talking in the preview, maybe because Mowbray's mentioned about doing it, a lot of games coming up, pick the same team.
I mentioned it earlier that I was surprised that he went with the same starting 11. Now I would have thought, it was an ideal chance for him to say to people like Barr, even though he's been playing well, look, you played a lot of games, bring Roberts in, bring Oshish in even, give people a rest.
It's hard to do that after winning though, isn't it? I think that's the manager struggles, that he's going to struggle to drop players when we've won games and played well.
Yeah, you're right.
I think that's a symptom of that. You'll find it a lot easier to rotate on Friday, put it that way.
Yeah, you're right. And it's it's easy for us to say in hindsight, because we know what happened in the game. But having said that, we did mention it after the Blackburn game because a lot of them looked absolutely knackered after that game.
Alan Jones says horrid sucker punch. Chris Day says they defended well, which is obviously something you've touched on quite a lot. David Marjoram says not our day. John Ridley, tempo not there. Connor, no cutting edge.
That's
Kingy,
a good shout.
Yeah,
Tempo.
Kingy, missing proven scorer. Alcom. Andrew Malcolmson says shoot on sight. Go on.
Just on that proven goal scorer, we could have had a 30 goal a season striker in that team, but would he have had a touch of the ball?
Yeah, that's true, isn't it? James Jelly says smash and grab. Jonathan Bestford says much better away. Yeah, let's just play every game away. I think it would be better. And my mate with a shit home record isn't allowed to go then because he doesn't do away.
It's I'm not sure well, you're right about away, but it ties in with how teams play against us because you look at the difference between Southampton, who thought, right, well, we're going to attack Sunderland and leave loads of space, and we punished them. So if teams give us a bit of space, if teams now watch the likes of Cardiff and how they defended, we're going to see a lot of this type of game.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's to be honest, we've seen a lot of this for a good few years now, but it's Owen Sarah, go again Friday. Michael Bowers, move on to Friday. Keith C, they got lucky. The SAFC Bible wasn't our day. Stephen Buston says frustratingly blunt display. Tony Holmes says the bubble burst.
Oh,
already. I'll end on this one from Mark Chisholm, who says totally dry bummed. There we go. Questions. I didn't read any swear words out today for the people who listen with their kids. Right, question. We've got loads of these, so unfortunately we're not going to get through all of them, but we will try and do as many as we can, as quickly as we can, so we'll not dwell on every one of them for ages. GMZ's asked, how class was Bellingham today? Undeserved hook for him. Also, do you think because we've got so much quality through the middle now, it's making it harder to exploit the game like we struggled to today? 2 banks of 4 and we were forced it through the middle instead of stretching them.
Yeah, well, I saw Bar hugging the touchline as usual, but even you're talking about the wide areas, and Cardiff knew that. I mean, all you need to do was watch that Blackburn game and how good Clark was, and they doubled up. They knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
They doubled up on him, and they got a bit of success when Huggins joined in. So he had a dummy run down the line, so he could actually cut inside. But if he was on his own and Huggins hadn't getting up there to support him, he did struggle because Cardiff, like I said, they always had two men on him. So, whether it was out wide today or through the middle, I just think Cardiff had a plan, and yeah, we just didn't break them down.
Yeah, there was 2 or 3 times where Clark managed to skip through, didn't he? But it was few and far between. It wasn't like that game the other day where he was just doing it because he had so much room. And that's maybe one of the instances where, although Huggins was one of our best players, it's one of those instances where maybe we're better with Sirkin on the pitch, because Sirkin is the left-footed player, can get round the outside and cause different problems. But I think what the guys just said there is true. It's difficult against 2 banks of 4 to just.
Oh yeah, we've said that.
It's just it is what it is. And not every team's going to play like that against us, but I think a fair few will.
Yeah, but for me, I mean, the Huggins thing wasn't necessarily that him getting on the ball. It was, if you go back to the amount of times Mickey Gray used to do shuttles running past Alan Johnson, not getting the ball, but it meant Alan Johnson could cut inside on his right foot, and it's exactly the same here. Like all Jack Clark needs is a runner to take one of the players out, and he can do the rest. But and every time Clark got a bit of joy today, it was because Huggins was on his bike running past him.
Mm-hmm. We've had a couple, and I don't want to read them all out, but we've had a few about Patterson criticisms, and I do want to address this because it's something we noticed and maybe wasn't picked up on the camera, and maybe people on the ground didn't see it. A lot of people criticising his kicking and maybe his positioning for the goal. But for most of the second half, he was holding his back. He was really struggling with his back. I don't know whether he got a knock going up for a long ball or whatever. I don't know what happened, but he was definitely hurt. It was noticeable. It was visible. He was bent over. Whenever the ball was down the other end of the pitch, he was bent over double trying to stretch it out. He looked really uncomfortable. It wasn't so uncomfortable that we had to make a change, but I'm just wondering, people are talking about his kicking and some of the other bits and pieces. I wonder if he played with a bit of a knock there, a bit of an injury. He certainly looked like, to me, from where I was sat, because he was holding his back all of that second half. And I hope it's nothing serious. But Gav Butler's asked, is Bishop a real challenge to his position? I mean, it's an interesting one because he's been given a contract this week, and it's very clear who the number 1 is. But Bishop's came from Man United, where he was right through pre-season. He was playing until they signed that absolute knacker they've got, who they paid a fortune for. Forgetting his name.
You must be devastated.
I know. I'm looking at him and think, bloody hell. But he was playing in pre-season for Man U, so he's not came here just to make the numbers up. He's came here hoping to challenge, and we're out the cups, so it's a bit difficult for him to make an impression. But is he a real challenge to that position, do you think?
I said that in pre-season on a prod when he first came in. He hasn't. We haven't convinced him to come to Sunderland to sit on the bench. Like, we haven't said, "Oh, look at what Alex Bass did last season. That's going to be you." I mean, he hasn't come in to do that, and he'll have been told that Patterson's the number 1. But if shows the business in training and all this sort of stuff, that he can get a chance. But he hasn't come from Man United just to kind of settle sitting on the bench for a season. I mean, he's going to be pushing Patterson, and it's got to keep Patterson on his toes. But I mean, I think it's slightly unfair just to, if Patterson was slightly uncomfortable and basically he had nothing to do except a corner that bounced off someone's back and went into the corner, slightly harsh.
Yeah, we'll bounce through some of these as we round off. John Wilson says, absolutely fine margin, smash and grab by Cardiff. Agree with Gav that we don't need a Joe Royal type of centre forward, and he says he's showing his age with that one. That would only disrupt our technical approach. I do think Hamia is most likely to fit the bill from early signs, although we've yet to see everyone. Yeah, we were just talking about that. I actually think Rusin might be, from the little I've seen, maybe the most suited to maybe playing that role. But yeah, I think it's going to be a case of, as the story of the season develops, we're going to end up working out that really we need a technician in that position, I think, rather than a big bully up there who's going to hold the ball up, because it's just not the way we play. Yeah. Peter Buster says, after getting our first glimpse of Rusyn today, I think he might prove a better fit with our existing players and that the bigger, more physical centre forwards. Strikes me that he might be a better Lincoln player. Yeah, again, a lot of people saying that based on what we saw. Daryl Gray says, find out what lads are ready for Monday and then smash Wednesday on the Friday. Absolutely. We've had a few of these where people have just basically, chalked it up to just being one of those days. Owen Sarah says, just one of those mental championship games. We didn't do a lot wrong, and it never seems to fall for us. Always likely to be a problem fixture. I just find that funny that he said it never seems to fall for us after the Blackburn game the other day, where we were absolutely battered and shouldn't have won and end up winning 3-1. But, maybe it feels like that sometimes when you don't get your own way. Shane Hagan says, there is no need to panic. We dominated. And we had more than enough chances to win the game. As smash and grab as they come onto Chef Wed. I think that's fair enough. There's going to be a lot of that. I think that'll definitely be the message emanating out of the camp. They're not going to dwell too much on this. They're going to be thinking about Chef Wed tomorrow, and hopefully Chef. And we're going to have a preview about Chef Wed before the game, but hopefully they hang on to their manager till match day because they're all over the place. I'd really fancy, even just based on what I saw today, Chris, I fancy just to batter them. There's nothing I haven't came away from today and been particularly worried about anything. I think there seems to be a big theme of this as we go through the comments. There's lots of people just, disappointed, yes, but not panicking.
Yeah, I was surrounded by Wednesday fans earlier today, and some of them are season ticket holders who are refusing to go to the match now because it's that bad. They want the manager out, they want the owner out. I was even winding them up that saying Warnock's going to be in charge in a few weeks, and they didn't like that too much.
Do you know what it is? He would keep them up.
Oh no, but they can't stand him. So that yeah. And I said it was either him or Wilder. So that I think they've stopped talking to us now. But let's hope he's still in charge because we'll see. But I mean, just going back. Just talking about talking about this week and that there was a message there to say not the end of the world. Absolutely right. It was a good performance on paper, but just looking at these last two games, you're looking at Blackburn away and Cardiff at home. If we'd gone to Blackburn, rode it out, under pressure, got a draw, and we ended up battering Cardiff at home and we got 4 points, everyone would be saying happy days, brilliant, fantastic. And actually, we're only a point worse off than that. And yes, it's frustrating because we were so good and we dominated, but still, we beat Blackburn against all odds, really, considering how the game went. So if you put it into that sort of terms and say, well, out of the two games, what would you expected? Yeah, 4 points would have been good. We got 3, so it's not too bad. We're on the right track.
Yeah, we've had lots of questions, topics and messages and all the rest of it, and I can't read them all out, but I think, to be honest, in the main, we've covered off pretty much everything that's been asked anyway, so hopefully you got your question answered, topic discussed and all the rest of it. Thanks everyone who sent in the 3-word reviews. Before we go, I just want to mention again about the book. If you haven't pre-ordered the book yet that we've got coming out, make sure you do. It's SAFC 365. It's a book about everything, really. There's a different article for every day of the year detailing something which has happened in the club's history over the God knows how many years it is since we were formed. I'm not going to get into that. I'm not going to get into that discussion today. But yeah, you need to go pre-order that from the Love Supreme website. The link for the book and the pre-order link is in every article on our website right at the top. So make sure you do that. The £10, all of the profit goes to Sunlun Community Soup Kitchen. And Chris is dying to say something. Yeah, go on, mate.
400 pages for £10. I mean, it's just a no-brainer, isn't it?
It is.
400 pages, and there's a cheeky forward from Peter Reid, who was good enough to provide us a bit for the book. So yeah, I mean, it's 400 pages for £10, bargain.
Exactly. Bargain. So yeah, make sure you buy that. And we're going to be back with a preview before Chef Wed. It's a big game and they're shite, and I'm actually looking forward to it despite what's happened today. I think this has been cathartic. Hopefully it's been cathartic for all of you. Hopefully it was cathartic for you, Chris.
No, I'm still miserable.
No. Still miserable. I know, but you've got this full week now with all these all these Wednesday fans, like, you know, you can just sort of build the game up, can't you? And
I know, but
hopefully rub it in come the weekend. So you could be it could either be a really good week or a really shit week for you.
I've been bigging us up, so if we don't get a result at Wednesday, I'm not showing my face around here for a while.
Cheers, mate. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to the listeners. We will, like I say, be back. So we'll see you then.